Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Spondifferous podcast. This is an episode called Going Back in Time, and it is about how limitations are often the best thing for us, and that there is a lot of freedom to be found in self-imposed boundaries. And so, with that in mind, let's jump into the episode.
I could start it like a letter. My dear friend Tanner, I feel that was that a weird way to start?
I don't know if you've ever called me your dear friend, and so I was just kind of riding that high.
All right, we'll go with it. My dear friend Tanner, I feel that there are drawbacks to being born in the 2000s as an artist, to be an artist born in the 2000s, because you're raised with so much sophisticated tech that you don't even necessarily know what to do with it. I think the real thing to say is you don't know how to appreciate all the things that you have with all these different tools that you have. And I feel that right now, wanting to make music, I don't know how to just sit down in front of Logic, which is my DAW, digital audio workstation, and record music. There's just some sort of a barrier that I don't know exactly how to put words to, that it keeps me from being productive in the number one thing that I want to be productive in, right? I mean, there's nothing that I love more than music, and I don't do it very often. Mm-hmm. I have everything that I need to become the next big songwriting star, right? Because it's accessible. It's not a very expensive software. It's one of those, like, you pay for it once and then you have it. Everyone from Adele to you name it has used Logic Pro 10. And I'm sitting here just like never opening it. And I don't know what to do with that.
So essentially, the problem that you're saying is that you have a world available to you. You have all of this ability that's just sitting, like this latent potential that's sitting there. Like, you could do anything you want with it, to create anything that you want. And so, like, if you have all that access, why don't you use it?
Almost like there's too much access. There's too much at my fingertips, and I'm too inexperienced, and I just do not know where to start.
Yeah, and that's kind of
scarier.
I mean, we kind of talked about this while we were pre-gaming, but that's kind of one of the first examples that I thought of where with music, I have just endless amounts of instruments in my computer that I can just call up and play on my keyboard. And like the synthesizers and everything, not only are there a million ways to tweak them, but there's a million different presets that you can then tweak from there. And there is
Wait. Do you really think there's a million different synthesizers?
No, not a million different synthesizers, but probably a million different combinations of sounds you can make, if not more.
That sounds right.
And so if you don't, having all of that open to you paralyzes you, because if you don't know your tools well enough, when the world is available, you don't know where to start, and if you don't have a starting place, then nothing gets started, and so you're disincentivized to even open it up in the first place, because you subconsciously are like, well, once I open it, then what? And so, like, for me, I just got an analog synthesizer, which, just to make it as super simple as possible, is a box that makes a sound wave. And from there, you can adjust it and change parameters and manipulate the sound in a bunch of different really cool ways. But since it's so limited, there's a set amount of knobs and a set amount of things that those knobs do. The limited aspect of it, the boundaries that it places me within, gives me more inspiration to try to actually sit down and use it and figure it out, because I think because it's almost like it's something that can be conquered in a way. It's almost something that can be.
You can understand the ins and outs of it.
I can grasp it. Whereas if it's just a computer with 1,000 different synths on it, 1,000 different sounds that aren't even just synths, but there are pianos and keyboards and trumpets and whatever instrument you can think of, and the ways that you can tweak those, then it's just like, okay, yeah, I have no clue what I want to do with this. And so imposing limits on you helps yourself.
Imposing limits on you helps yourself. That's a good quote. It
could probably be worded a little better, but yeah.
No, let's make a t-shirt. I
Cool.
think that if you look at like what a computer is, it's my numbers here, I'm just pulling out of thin air, but it's 20 years of innovation. It's 20 years of adding onto it. When you look at that software, it's, what am I trying to say? It's 20 years of history, as opposed to like the synthesizer that you're doing that is simpler and able to be understood. But with, I guess, you were showing me the other day how pianos are recorded that are put into Logic, and how I'd imagine that's similar to how synthesizers are recorded and put in there. It's like people put all these microphones around an acoustic piano and record each note one at a time. And so when you go through these different names, if you open up your audio software and you look at each of these different names of these different kinds of pianos in different spaces, like your room or your hallway or you name it, like a dozen things, it's so much. It's so much. And there's something beautiful about, not having the computer. You're just starting out as an artist. You have an acoustic piano that is in your hallway. And that's the one sound that you have. The beauty in that is something that I think people are more prone to create in that environment with that lone piano. And I think that you can emulate that. Like, I feel that in the last couple months, we've been tinkering with this idea a little bit. And I'd like to say that the tinkering has been kind of a successful experiment. What do you think about it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even when you were describing the piano, I was thinking about the thing we talked about earlier in a different conversation about Jack Johnson recording his first album and his frustration about only having one snare sound or one drum set. But from that one drum set, he came out with just as good of a debut album as I've heard from
the whole
anybody.
Album. He did an entire album, and it's one of my favorites ever.
Yeah. I was talking to my brother the other day, and we were talking about desert island albums, like top 5 that you'd have to take with you, and I put that in there, and he was just like, "Oh, that's a good pick." But yeah,
that's nice. That's nice that your brother affirms you like that, because my brother always tells me, like, Jack Johnson's irrelevant today, and I'm like, bro, oh man, I just want to slap him. But
well, there are plenty of things that he would like to slap me about, and that I would reverse that with.
Yeah, we would just have a slapping fest in a weird slap triangle.
Yeah, slaps would abound, and it'd just get too much too quick. But yeah, to sum it up, I think our tinkering has been successful. I've also done tinkering, or started to, with this whole thing is kind of like just talking about analog versus digital almost, because digital is the world of being able to have limitless options and the utmost accessibility, even with our cameras, where you can take a picture immediately. You can take 16 pictures a second, and
right.
You don't even have to think twice about it. And so I recently got I film a lot of stuff, but I don't take very many pictures. I just don't really enjoy it that much. But I like having pictures that preserve memories and that sort of thing. And so I recently got a film camera, and since getting it, when I notice a moment, well, first off, I'm more likely to notice moments that I would like to preserve when I'm in the middle of the moment, which is kind of cool. But also, when I notice those moments, I have the film camera, which is you have 36 shots per roll, and then you have to go develop it, and so you're really limited. And so you better think hard about if that's a picture that you actually want to take. And so when I notice those moments, I'm way more likely to be like, okay, cool, this is one that's worthy of documenting, and I'll go grab my camera and just do a little snip, snap.
Yeah. Yeah, and the development process, having to actually send your film and then wait to get your photos back. I'm sure that process gives you a deeper relationship with the photos when you get them.
I hope it will. I haven't gotten any film developed yet.
You haven't gone through that yet?
No, I'm pretty new to the thing. Like, I got my camera a little while ago, and I've done a couple shoots, but I haven't sent the film off yet.
Okay, yeah. Well, plus, being a videographer, I guess both of us being videographers, we're always filming with cameras that could be thought of as photo cameras.
Yeah.
And so to just switch the dial to photo and then use that, I mean, yeah, it's always seemed... I don't know. I guess I like the video more.
I do too.
I just do. What did I hear? A quote today that like video is like a moving mosaic. It's a medium unlike any other. The way that it captures time, from the time that you hit record to the time that you stop, or from the time that a director says action to when he says cut. You know, and the camera's rolling. It's literally capturing time. As it plays out. And I just thought, man, like there is something really romantic about video that I love. But you know, I haven't gotten an actual film camera that I've been using. I got like 5 from my grandparents, but they're from like the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think the film for one of them is like $800 a roll.
Yeah, that kind of defeats the whole accessible purpose, sort of.
Your situation's better.
It doesn't have to be like as accessible as a digital camera, but you have to at least be able to realistically be able to use it.
Yeah. So you've been
tinkering like with other stuff in that realm.
Yeah,
still.
yeah. I mean, I got like 3 different ways that I've been trying to mess with this idea. I mean, the first one is a paint by numbers kit. You know, I've wanted to learn how to draw, wanted to learn how to paint. And when I look at a blank canvas, I think, well, I don't want to waste that. Even though it was only like $2.50.
Right.
And then I'm like, well, I don't really know how to clean brushes well. So in my experience, when I use a brush, it's a one and done. No. And that's incredibly wasteful and terrible. But there's all these stupid things like that, these inexperienced things that make me create less. And so I got a paint by numbers.
Which, for people who don't know, is just like you order it off of the website and it sends the brushes and the paints to you, and you kind of like, it's almost like connect the dots, but instead you just fill in where the paint tells you to, right?
Yeah, there's spaces with numbers in them, and you just paint in those spaces the color that goes with the number. It's because I got this app on my iPad, which is called Procreate, and it's a pretty affordable drawing app if you don't take into account how expensive an iPad is. When I open that up, it's another example of not knowing where to start. But after drawing with these 6 brushes that I have, you know, I look at the brush options in this drawing software, and I'm like, I know those brushes. Mm-hmm. You know, I've used those. There's a brush that is meant to be used for making trees really easily, and I'm like, you know, I've actually made
used that
a tree
in real life. Yeah.
Yeah.
It got you familiar with the tools.
Yeah, the canvas, the $2.50 canvas I bought that I used to be scared of doing. I bought paint and I just put paint all over that thing and used my brushes, and it's like the paint by numbers just made me more confident both on a real canvas and in my painting software.
It just introduces you to the world of painting.
Well, yeah, your hand gets used to what acrylic paint feels like when it comes off the brush and goes onto the canvas. You get a feel for what this kind of canvas feels like, and you know, holding a brush. I mean, it's a great way to just get into the basics. I also got a typewriter, you know, maybe 6 months ago, and I don't use it for everything. I can already say that much, but it really got me into typing, because writing, yeah. I mean, I've always had Microsoft Word on my computer, and you know, you remember like middle school, we
Which
were
is
raised with
way
Microsoft
easier
Word.
to use than a typewriter.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. It's all, but it is more in depth.
Yeah.
I took apart a typewriter, and engineering wise, those things are very in depth and amazing, and I love them. But
Yeah.
they're not technology in the sense that, well, they're not digital. They're very sophisticated technology, but they're not digital. And Microsoft Word has so many things it can do. And maybe it's just less fun, I guess. If you were to be raised with Microsoft Word and then one day in your teenage years, you're like, I think I want to be a writer.
Yeah.
And then it's like, what am I going to turn to? The thing I was raised with, like, kind of seems boring. I think that's real.
Yeah.
You
that's
know?
fair.
So if you get a typewriter, you're like, what on earth is this thing? This is from the 1940s, and mine is. It's from 1948.
That's pretty legit.
It's amazing. And when you press it, if you don't press the key hard enough, and like you have to strike it with your finger, which that actual mechanical motion with your finger pushes it, and it goes through all its levers and whatnot, and it sends this key flying up at your page, and it strikes the page with the energy that came from your hand. And so it is a whole different experience.
It's almost like,
using a
there's a huge amount of satisfaction of earning the thing that you've created.
Yeah, but also just having something new. I mean, I thought writing was the coolest thing for about a month and a half. Like, it was a high that lasted 6 weeks. I wrote every day.
Yeah, that's a long
this
high
typewriter.
too.
It is. It was exciting. I was able to just be creative and do creative writing, whatever came to my mind, and just do like a page a day. And at the end of that, I opened up Microsoft Word and I looked at it, and I had a completely different relationship immediately with Microsoft Word. And
What was that relationship?
It was
what changed?
understanding. It was understanding a little bit more of where we had come from to get to this digital point. You know, my keyboard it's like, as far as keyboards go, it's as easy as it gets, and it's a very flat surface, and you know, it like doesn't make a sound, and it's such a different device from a typewriter. And I like writing more, no matter where I'm writing, whether it be by hand on paper or whatever, because of getting a typewriter. It's not something you can put into words fully. It's an experience someone would have to go and do. If they want to be a writer, I would say go do that.
Yeah, that is actually that's a really cool piece to it. That, you know, all of this isn't to just disparage the incredible feat that like modern technology is. You know, having the digital age of just like everything is available to you, and you can create anything from nothing, pretty much. The hard part about it is what we've talked about, is just that if you aren't familiar with creating in that space, then you're not going to know where to start. However, when you do get that appreciation, that appreciation that you're talking about, and you then are given access to create more freely with all those different options, it's just you become like a superhero, and you become that much more powerful in what you're able to create. Jacob Collier actually had a really good quote, which it's funny coming from him, but he said, I think it might have been just like on an Instagram post that I saw the other day. People are always talking about how less is more, less is more. You know, his teachers always told him, hey, you're playing too much, less is more. And he said, well, that's true, but most people say that in a lazy way, because how can you know that less is more if you don't know what more is? And he, like a lot of people, like would say that he still just does way too much. But I think the quote itself is really profound. And I do love a lot of the stuff that he does. Where, you know, I think for a lot of people, it is that less is more because they don't know what more is. And so if you're trying to do more, then it's not going to translate very well. But when you learn from kind of like that foundation, the building blocks, and like from the limitations that you place on yourself, you gain access to the more, and hopefully can then use it tastefully and in ways that are really inspiring.
Yeah, I always think of Jacob Collier's like Zoom call, FaceTime call with Charlie Puth, where, you know, Charlie Puth being more on the pop side, where, which is closer to like what I would like to get into. It's this understanding of, you know, good art is understanding the complexities of like what people are after.
Yeah.
I think, at least to a degree, it's like if you release something that becomes successful, that is a skill to be able to do that and be able to do that consistently. Jacob Collier, on the other end, is an artist that is all about expression. It's not about just like, again, it's not about just like figuring out the psyche of your customer, of your consumer, and thinking, what are they after? How can I create something that they're going to jam to, that's going to add something to their life? And it's this artist experience that is really focused on the consumer. Jacob Collier is more focused on his own expression, I would feel.
Yeah. And I think the piece that is coming for him is just that he's gotten so good at translating how he feels, that expression, that even though it's not like pop necessarily in the sense that it would normally appeal to a lot of people, it's gotten to that level that people are still kind of drawn to it, that they're like, this is just different and bigger or more involved than almost anything that I ever see. And so sometimes it's just too much, and other times it's kind of sitting there bewildered and in awe.
Yeah, I mean, in that FaceTime call, Charlie Puth was telling Jacob, you know, why don't you do one album that is less crazy? And then Jacob said to Charlie, why don't you do an album that is absolutely bonkers, like totally going crazy on your creativity? And that is their two positions, you know?
Yeah, that's
and
a clear
it's
distinction.
Funny. But Jacob Collier comes across a little more like, because of the way that he is, he's great and he's a genius, but he comes across a little crazy.
Yeah.
Maybe kind of like the kid that eats glue in class, but not just blatantly unaware, like not in that sense that what he's doing is wrong, but more in the sense that it's like, he's like, but wait a minute, maybe something could be cooked with this and we're missing out on a real potential here.
Yeah.
And why say no to anything before trying it? And it's just like, you do need that in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because neither one is necessarily like right. It's just a matter of like what is better for the given person. And it is true though, I think, that what you're saying with like the way that Charlie Puth kind of was approaching it does tend to appeal to more people.
Well, yeah, it's like that is the focus,
yeah.
I would think, to a degree. They might be like, oh, I don't focus on this, but like, I think it's hard to say that you make pop music that like consistently that is just really successful, and you're not, to at least some degree, focused on making that music for someone other than yourself. Because I think most people, their expression and whatnot does like to at least fly off the wall to a degree, go outside of the reins of what would be successful. And for people that stay reined in, stay honed in on things that are successful, I think that, yeah, they're like Charlie Puth, they're focused on their crowd. They're aware of what would be successful, and that is what they're after.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like one other thing that's just important to note is how these drawbacks of being born in the 2000s with all of this tech, of maybe being bored of that tech or
Not fully appreciating it.
Not fully appreciating it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those same drawbacks have probably been around for any generation throughout all of time that has been given some new tool that they didn't have before. Right? I mean, it's just having something that the people that are already 40 years old look at it and they go, you don't know what it is that you have. And they're right. And you being so young, you're like, this has always been around, at least in my lifetime. And so you don't think it's so special.
Like when the typewriter came out, people, like the hipsters, going back to handwriting everything because that was that's now the cool thing to do since it's vintage.
Yeah, it's probably terrible examples we're giving, but I think literally through all of time, any innovation with a tool that has been, there's probably been generational differences structured around the release of that new tool, that there's just differing understandings of that tool, of course, but also just differing willingnesses to use it, or a different draw to using it. Some people might be more drawn to use it because they understand that it's so much more efficient than what they used to have, or whatever. And that's just, I don't know. I feel like that's important to note because it's a good reason to go buy something old to hardwire into your brain where we've come from.
Yeah.
And I just feel like
to develop that appreciation.
Yeah, I feel like I could guarantee that this is going to be helpful for people.
Yeah.
Because I have felt so great.
And it's not just going and doing those things just for sake of doing them, but more so if it's a field that you're interested in, learning the roots and the history of it, but not just through reading a book or reading something online, but it's more experiencing the roots and the history
hands-on.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It really does feel like you're stepping into a whole new aspect of the world that you're supposedly supposed to already know a whole lot about.
And it just makes you more interesting. I mean, I was talking with a bunch of old people the other day, as I do, and I was like, those typewriters? And this whole group of old people is looking at me like, who is this kid? He knows about typewriters?
Flock over to you. They're like, oh, typewriter.
I'm gonna write him into my will. And so
let me give you all my money.
Now I have that going for me.
Thank you everybody for listening to the Spondifferous podcast. We have a lot more episodes coming out soon. On top of that, we also have all of our music up on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever else you stream. We also have a lot of YouTube videos coming out soon, as well as we do a lot of fun stuff on social media with Instagram and TikTok and all that stuff, trying to keep things fun and lighthearted. So go find us on there if you're interested in listening and watching more.